just gonna do a free tour with this guy. Just join them.
I'm gonna stay there for a while. If you have any questions, need some recommendations and so on, I'm gonna be there for you. And also during the tour, don't hesitate to ask questions. You see, we're not a huge group, so you have the opportunity to ask whatever is interesting to you. Feel free to ask questions. Now, a few words about myself. I'm a local. I was born here in Sofia. I studied here. I was an actor in the theater, but then I quit the theater to pursue my child dream of becoming a film director. That's what I'm up to now. I'm writing the script of my third film. Really love these things.
Yay.
I also have a band. I'm playing keys over there. And I do these tours and I really love them because, you know, honestly, as a local, I can tell you, we tend to hate our city. We only see negative things, broken sideways, renovations and so on. And you know, when I started making this tour, these things really changed for me because I started seeing the city from a foreigner's perspective. And I see it now as a very nice and green and relaxed city. And you know, it's a very strange combination as this is the major city in the country with the best opportunities, but still it doesn't feel like a major capital. People are very relaxed. You see, it's a normal working day. Nobody's in a hurry, just enjoying life. It's a very, very positive thing about the city. And I really hope you're gonna come back someday in the spring or in the summer. It's a very green city with lots of parks. Now that's when people really, really start enjoying the city itself. Yeah. So, a few words about the organization. We have the Free Sofia tour. Behind we have this organization called 365. Any idea why, what these numbers stand for? Because we have the tour taking place every single day. You know, no matter what, rains, thunderstorms, tsunamis, the tour takes place. So this organization 365 is a non-profitable one, not sponsored by the government or anyone. So at the end of the tour, if you have enjoyed it, you can support us by leaving a donation. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's more or less the organizational part. Any questions? You know, if you don't have any, I'm gonna take you to another place over there. It's gonna be a bit quieter. A few words about this place. That is the Palace of Justice, the main court in town. And we're standing at the beginning of the main pedestrian street, the Bittersweet Boulevard. It's this street over there. Now it's called like that because when you're walking on it on a clear day, like this one, you get to see a very nice view of the Bittersweet mountain. It's a very tall mountain, and it's pretty close to here. Its highest peak is 2,298 meters. It's like 40 minutes away from here. So if you're into skiing, you can have a day off over there in the mountains, skiing down there. That's what a lot of people are doing after they finish job. In the evening, they take their cars, go up there, and do night skiing. All right, so any questions? Let's go to this little square over there, and I'm gonna give you a brief introduction to the history of the city. Let's go.
How cool is that? I just joined this free tour now. Just walking around and I saw these chaps here. No one knows the place better than a local, no? So he just said this is the Justice Court. Hopefully my battery will last. How you doing, boss man? Good? Taxi. Taxi, no taxi.
Here we see the mountain I was telling you about. You see there's this half of snow up there.
I feel myself like I'm in kindergarten when we go in 2 by 2. Look, the snow. You still find snow. Oh, competition. 1 tour, 2nd tour. That's the cool church over there.
Now, you know, the history of the city is pretty long. Do you have any idea how old it is?
Like the St. George Church.
4th century? No, guys. It's much older than that. In fact, historians date the existence of the city to be 7,000 years ago. So, first known inhabitants were the Thracians. Heard about these guys, the Thracians? If you haven't, makes sense. These guys didn't have an alphabet to write things down. So most of the things we know about them is from the ancient Greeks, and the Greeks hated them. You know, to them it was their northern lazy neighbors that were doing nothing but drinking wine and causing troubles. And in reality, now these Thracians, they were really into making wine. One of their main gods was Dionysius, the god of the wine. So they were living here, divided on these small tribes. They never managed to form a big Thracian empire because they were too busy fighting with each other, drinking wine. So they're on that spot, on the place of the city of Sofia, there was this little Thracian tribe called the Serbis. And that's why later, when the Romans conquered the city, they named it Serdica, because of this little Thracian tribe. So remember this name, Serdica, that was like the first real name of the city. The Romans conquered these territories here around the 1st century, and they thought it's a very good place here in the Balkans. The city was in a very central place, right in the middle of the Balkans. So they decided to turn the city into an administrative center, and they did lots of things. They constructed many things, and we're gonna see various ruins all around the city. Archaeologists currently believe that underneath of the square of Saint Sunday, is being buried the remains of the ancient Roman Forum with all these administrative buildings. There's even a project to uncover these things, but we're going to see many other Roman ruins and few buildings that have always been in use. They remained intact through this entire long period. So the city peak remained the Roman possession until the 9th century, when it was taken over by the Bulgarians. Now the Bulgarians arrived here in the 7th century. They were a nomadic tribe. They came from Central Asia, and it was just a small group of Bulgarians that reached this spot, but then they fell in love with these territories. Mainly because what they reached in northern Bulgaria was nothing but fields. And they thought, wow, we're going to be doing our agriculture here, we're going to stop traveling, we're going to have our own state, and it's going to be great. But you can imagine it was a very difficult task, as the territories were part of the Eastern Roman Empire. That's the Byzantine Empire, the nowadays Greeks. And it wasn't so easy to conquer territories from them, because they were pretty well organized. But the Bulgarians, they convinced the local Thracian and Slavic tribes that if they unite all together, they're going to be able to defeat the Byzantine Empire and take some of these territories. So they did it, and that is how the first Bulgarian state was established in 681. And we were very proud of this fact, as it makes Bulgaria one of the oldest countries in Europe that actually never ever changed its name. How cool is that? So now, later Bulgaria started expanding, and it was the 9th century that the city was taken over by the Bulgarians. This same 9th century, we accepted Christianity and we developed our own alphabet. That's the Cyrillic alphabet, and probably it's making your lives pretty difficult while you're here. Key things are written only in Cyrillic, but we love it. We even have a special holiday dedicated to the alphabet, the 24th of May. The Alphabet Day. So you know, the alphabet was of a key importance for the country and for the identity of the Bulgarians, because back in the days, in medieval times, the only book available was more or less the Bible. And we had the Bible translated onto our own language. So if we didn't have our own alphabet, the Bulgarians would have been reading the Bible in Greek. And with our Greek neighbors, we were probably melted culturally with them. But we had our own Bible, things were so good. The country was expanding and expanding until the 11th century, when all of a sudden it was conquered by the Byzantine Empire. For a century and a half, Bulgaria didn't exist. It was part of the Byzantine Empire. But then we had the second Bulgarian state established, re-established, and we had our moments of glory, but the country was once again conquered, this time by the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Turks stepped here on the Balkan Peninsula, conquered everything. So for the next 500 years, Bulgaria again didn't exist, as it was part of the Ottoman Empire. Now, they teach us in school that it was a very difficult moment for the Bulgarians, because they wouldn't occupy a very high status in society, but still the Bulgarian identity was preserved. The Bulgarians had the right to be practicing their beliefs, you know, with the religion, the Orthodox Christianity. You know, they were using the Bulgarian alphabet, so they had the Bulgarian identity preserved. And finally, in the end of the 19th century, there was a war between Russia and the Ottoman Empire. So, so the result of this war was the liberation of Bulgaria. It took place in 1878. And that is when the third Bulgarian state was established, the one that we're living nowadays. Now, we locals here had these enormous ambitions after Bulgaria was liberated. We thought that we're going to now conquer all these territories inhabited with Bulgarians. In our dreams, that was the entire Balkan Peninsula. So we started getting involved in various wars in order to get these territories. And at first, things were going so well. You know, our army, even though it wasn't trained, you know, they were willing to sacrifice everything for the idea. They were pretty brave and very scary to the other armies. So we were winning battle after battle, and things were going very well until some breaking point when we started losing all the wars. This way, we lost some of the Balkan Wars, we lost the First World War, the Second World War. Yay! As a result of that, we became a satellite of the Soviet Union, and you know, we're never part of the USSR, but we're a very loyal satellite state to the Soviet Union. So what followed was 45 years of socialism. Completely different system, and life was pretty different than what we have nowadays. But then this period ended in the fall of the Berlin Wall. The very next day, we started building the democracy here. So as a result of that, in 2004, we're part of NATO. In 2007, we're part of the European Union. And most important of all, from 2010, we have the Free Sofia Tour. So guys, that was briefly these 7,000 years of history. I hope you remember something, as we're quite useful when we walk around, but you can always ask questions. Yeah. So, any questions? No. It seems like you learned everything. I'm proud of you. Good. So now that we're here, let me draw your attention towards the church over here. Now, we're going to complete the tour at the Alexander Nevsky Cathedral, the biggest one. Until the Alexander Nevsky Cathedral was built, that was the main church of the city here, in the city center. There was a roundabout here, like a very important road place. And the first church, in fact, dates from the 10th century on that spot. It was built by the Bulgarians, and obviously, you know, it was much smaller. It was a small wooden barrack that throughout history was several times destroyed and re-established until its last destruction that took place in 1925. And in fact, that's the most interesting story related to that church. Now, in 1925, the third Bulgarian state was existing, and it was a parliamentary monarchy. So basically, we had our king and a parliament. Now, in the parliament, like in many other European countries, we had the Communist Party that was struggling to get the power. And they tried to arrange something like the October Revolution, but you know, things didn't work out here. So the Communist Party was banned, and now they were still looking for a way how to get the power. So they thought that in order to get the power, they'll simply kill the king. So they tried killing the king, the simplest way. They found a gun and tried to shoot him. But you know, it was a hard task because the king had the National Guard, some professionals that were constantly sticking around him and basically protecting him. So what really happened was that one of the guards saw what's going on, so he stood in front of the king and sacrificed his life to save the king's life from this bullet that was shot against him. So, you know, the king was saved, but the communists wouldn't give up. This time, they decided to make some better preparation. They decided to assassinate a very important general here. They did it in Sofia, because they knew that his funeral would take place here, inside of this church. They were also aware that the funeral had to be attended by the king himself, as well as some other ministers and important generals, because they, you know, this guy that was assassinated was a big thing. So, knowing all these things, they managed to bribe the clergy of the church and began stashing dynamite underneath its dome. So, when the funeral started and everybody was inside, they detonated all this dynamite. The dome flew into the air to collapse over all these people. And that was a real disaster. More than 200 people found their death on the spot inside. 500 more were badly injured. And it's been the biggest terrorist attack we've ever had here in Bulgaria. However, still, our king managed to survive.
Yay.
And, you know, he did survive by profiting from a typical Bulgarian bad habit. Can you guess what it was?
Turkish baths.
Turkish bath. No. Not smoking either? No? Something else?
Drinking wine.
No. The king was simply late.
Okay.
Yeah, he was late and that saved his life. You know, ever since then, here in Bulgaria, we're always late. We say it's good for our health. Yeah. Now, you know, the king was late because of a very big coincidence. He actually had to attend another funeral of another guy, and that was actually the same guard that saved his life before. So you see, this guard saved the king's life twice. So, a remarkable thing, because he did some really positive things for the Bulgarians during the Second World War. So remember this king of ours, Boris III. We're gonna speak again about him a bit later. Yeah. Otherwise, the church is called Saint Sunday. The name of the church comes from this Greek saint called Kyriaki, which means Sunday. After the church was destroyed in the 30s, it was rebuilt, and it's an Orthodox Church. That's the main religion in Bulgaria. 70% of the Bulgarians would define themselves as Orthodox or Christians, and we have 10% of the population being Muslim. There are not so many here in Sofia. There will be less than 1% in Sofia. The majority of these Muslims are living in the south of Bulgaria, close to Turkey. Still though, we have a functioning mosque, the one over there. So we're going to speak about it as well. So, we're now going to be going. Any questions before that? Let's go. speak about these buildings a bit later. We're going to be in the middle of the square, so all these times. And something here is you see these between the arches there are these circles. It's probably one of the only places in the city where you can still see some of the communist symbols. There are the stars in these circles. On many other places, the stars were removed. There's a law denying to have communist symbols in the south. But I guess they
communist stars.
These ones over there. Anyways, we're going to speak more about communist times a bit later. Now, the things important over there are statues. That's the statue of Saint Sophia. Now, she's supposed to be the symbol of our city, but there's a big misunderstanding with her because the name of our city doesn't come from her. She's an early Christian martyr. She basically died defending the values of Christianity. However, the name of our city comes from this church called Saint Sophia. We're going to see it, but it was built by the Greeks. And in Greek, there's this expression, Hagia Sophia, which means hardy wisdom. It has nothing to do with this lady up there. But you know, we started accepting her as a symbol of the city because in communist times, on her place was the statue of Lenin. Yes, I guess the more suitable thing to have is her instead of Lenin. Yeah. Now, behind her, there's this white building with a cross. That is the Catholic Cathedral of Sofia. There was another one from the 19th century, but it got destroyed during the era of the Second World War. Basically, they were bombing the entire city center, and they heavily damaged the cathedral. So in communist times, nobody bothered to re-establish the Catholic Cathedral. But in the year 2002, after the end of the communism, Pope John Paul II came here and laid the first stone of the foundations of the new one. It's called St. Joseph. And an interesting thing about it is that in its backyard, on the far side, we found a small archaeological complex from Roman times. They're basically everywhere around the city. Behind these fences, they're uncovering a new one. So over there is the eastern gate of the ancient century. You know,
sorry.
The Romans with a certain circle.
Just coming so close, just to get the sound you get. Sorry about that.
The centers of the more important cities with a fortress. So there was the eastern gate of the fortress. Remember its place because we were visiting a bit later. There's the western gate. We're visiting the eastern gate, and you're gonna get an idea about the dimensions of the city back then from in Roman times. Yeah. All right. So, any questions?
I got one question.
Yeah.
You said because Hagia Sophia is Hagia Sophia, no?
Hagia Sophia, yeah.
Yeah. It's from the Greek church.
Yeah.
I just came yesterday from Istanbul, and it's a big mosque over there.
Yeah.
Hagia Sophia.
Basically, the two of them, and it wasn't only two, there were a few of them churches that were built by the Emperor Justinian. He had this program of building churches all around the empire and naming them Hagia Sophia. So later, you know, that was the biggest church in the world, the Hagia Sophia, and back then Constantinople. After the Ottomans took over Constantinople, they turned it into a mosque.
Okay, got it.
Nowadays it's a museum.
Yeah. If you guys going to Istanbul, you need to go to Hagia Sophia over there. It's something else. Something else. Thank you.
All right, we have some soundtrack here. Now, let's go down the stairs to our next stop. It's going to be a bit more quiet. Let's go.
All right. So yeah, this guy is singing over there.
Now, it's a very, very interesting place here in the city because we see a vertical slice of it. and it uncovers 3 different layers in 3 major periods of the city. Now we're just now on the contemporary level from the 19th and the 20th century. Here was the level of the city in medieval times. That's a medieval church standing on it, and down there is the Roman layer. We're going to see many more ruins from this layer on the next stop. So it happened like that because here, next generations. First of all, the city's pretty old, so all the dust and dirt was remaining here inside of the city, and it was making the level of the city grow higher and higher. And very often, next generations would build on top of the remains of the previous ones. So that is why we say we have a layered city. And here we have an example. There's this medieval church being built over an ancient Roman crypt. Now, that thing happened around the 15th century. Back in the days, the country was already conquered by the Ottoman Empire, so there was no Christian state that could fund the establishment of new Christian temples. So on that spot in medieval times, there was a market, and in this market, the richest people were the Bulgarian saddlers, who were making saddles for the horses. So they decided to collect some money and to build their own church, as there was no one else that could do it. And they had the money, they collected it, and they were just about to start building, but then there was a big problem. It turned out that in order to build a church in Ottoman times, you had to receive permissions from the Ottoman authorities, and there were a lot of authorities, and they were very, very, very slow. Sometimes building a church in this period, simply to get the permission to start building this church, would have taken you up to 100 years. And these merchants wanted to see this church in their lifetime, so they decided to troubleshoot with the best solution here in the Balkans, which is corruption. Yeah. So they started bribing the authorities to get this faster permission, and a few weeks after that, they got their permission and they're ready to start building. However, they encountered another problem. It turns out they spent all of their money all their money bribing the authorities. So now there was no money for materials for the church itself. So the legend goes that they started collecting bricks and stones from abandoned buildings to complete the church itself. It's a legend, but there are a lot of Roman bricks that are pretty suspicious in this construction. It might have been true. So anyways, nowadays it's not a really functioning church. They would only open on a Christian holiday. You can still visit. Keep in mind, all the functioning churches here are free of charge. So now what's really functioning is the crypt underneath, or you can light a candle. But if you're very curious to see the church from the inside, you can hand 2-3 leva to the people inside, and they're gonna let you in.
Bribe them, no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Some things never change. Yeah, so here we have the same Petka Church, and now we're heading over there. I'm gonna show you some of the Roman remains here around the city.
All good.
Alright, now, tell me guys, how old do you think these things here are?
Million years? It's a rock. You never know.
They're old. Well, in fact, they're 5 years old here. Yeah.
5 years?
Come here as the other group. Now, these things, they were all discovered when the authorities were digging for the metro here, and it wasn't such a big surprise that they were going to discover things from Roman times. Now, already when the communists were digging the ground for these buildings, they discovered many things from Roman times. but they didn't really care about them so much, so he started pouring the concrete on top. And 15 years ago, he decided that we're going to preserve these things and we're going to create this open-air museum. And they did it, and it was super nice and authentic. However, a bit later, they realized that all these things are starting to get destroyed because of all the rains and you know, and snow. So that's when they decided to preserve the remains. They created this top layer. See, there's this line which is dividing the real remains here from this protective layer. The idea is to protect things. They placed some more cement to keep things together, and eventually we went too far away with these brand new tiles that we imported from Turkey because they were the best price. But you know, otherwise the idea is to have this complex with real Roman remains and feel like we're in Pompeii. Yeah. Now, this part of the city was the place where the richest Romans were living. Now, normally, the population of a Roman city that had a fortress would be living outside of the walls of the city, but inside would be the administration and the houses of the most important Romans. And these were their houses. These are the remains of their houses. They were pretty sophisticated. All of them had sewer systems, and some of them even had the floor heating system. So it was pretty sophisticated. Let's walk around, and we're going to stop at one of the main streets in the Roman city. Let's go.
Sorry, that's okay.
There's a picture of the current place when it was uncovered. More or less the original things were preserved underneath this protective layer. Now we're standing here on one of them two main streets in the city. This one is called Maximus. It was connecting with the northern gate over there with the southern gate of the city. So curious thing is that nowadays on the same place of the street goes the Bittersweet Boulevard, the main pedestrian and shopping street, and basically has the same function as in Roman times. You know, the layout of the nowadays city is being defined by the Roman streets back in the days, but there is also a very strong Oatman influence on the way how the city's layout. Because you know, in Ottoman times, most of the streets would be facing the direction of Mecca because the mosques have to be facing this direction. So in some places around the city, we're gonna also see that, you know, there's this big communist building over there. The streets are crossing into a pretty strange angle. That's where the Ottoman streets are crossing with the Roman streets. Yeah, we have these two layouts. Now, and speaking of these things, you know, there's this mosque which is the only functioning one in the only functioning mosque in Sofia. It dates from the 16th century and it's called Banyabashi, which means something like the mosque of the Turkish bath. Right next door, there are the remains of the Ottoman hammam. It's part of a bathing complex. Now, if he's functioning, he's calling for a prayer. There's a minaret up there, and there's loudspeakers, so the muezzin would be calling for a prayer, but he doesn't do it 5 times a day, as it's normally in the Muslim world. Here, they would skip the first call and the last call because of some regulations with the noise, and some locals started complaining that it's too early, so they would skip these ones. But still, you know, still operate. So, let's go this way. We're going to climb up over there, and I'm going to tell you about the two other buildings. There's the central covered market, and behind it is the black dome of the Synagogue of Sofia. Let's go. gonna try to slow it down a little bit. Alright, so from here, I just brought you here because there's some sun. From here, you can see the black dome of the synagogue and in between the roofs of the central covered market. Now, the central covered market dates from the beginning of the 20th century. It was placed on the, it was built on a place of an open air market, so people still enjoy it, and I can highly recommend you to check it out. There's nothing really special inside of it. It has a really nice spirit and vibe. But now behind it is the synagogue, and the synagogue is the biggest one in its style, and that is the Sephardic style. Now, it is in this style because the Jewish community in Bulgaria arrived from Spain. They were exiled during the Inquisition, so they decided to settle down here during Ottoman times because of the policy of the Oatman Empire. Basically, as I told you, they would allow people to practice different religious beliefs in return of higher taxes. And that was pretty much okay for the Jewish people, as they were paying additional taxes, then receiving this security. And they remained here happily, and after the liberation there were counted about 50,000 Jewish people living here in the territories of Bulgaria. Now, nowadays there are less than 5,000, and it has nothing to do with the fact that Bulgaria joined the Second World War on the side of the Nazis, because back then here our Jewish people used to have something like WikiLeaks, some information leaked, they understood what's going on, and they wrote a letter to our king, Boris III. Now, Boris III, we already know him, the guy that survived the terrorist attack over there. He wrote the letter, and now he realized that the situation is very difficult, because he made certain promises to the Nazis about deporting the Jewish community and so on, but at the same time they were receiving a huge support from everyone in the country. The population, the Bulgarians, different politicians, the church itself, everybody was against the deportation of the Jewish people. So the king was right in the middle of this thing, and he had to balance, and he was trying to figure out a way how to get out of the situation, until he remembered how he survived in the terrorist attack over there by being late. So that's when he realized that the Bulgarian bad habits are actually something very, very positive. So he decided to profit from another typical Bulgarian bad habit, which is postponing and procrastinating. Yeah, typical thing. I do it all the time. So what was going on was like, the Nazis were on the phone saying, "What's going on? Where are the Jewish people?" And our king would say, "We're gonna send them, don't worry, next month." And in order to make things sound more credible, he'd be saying that he needs the Jewish people to be building roads for Nazi tanks to cross Bulgaria. Now, in reality, nobody was really forced to do these things. Probably that's the reason why we still don't have these roads in our country. One of the very few things that Jewish people were forced to do was to wear these yellow stars here that would indicate in the society that they're Jewish. But the impact wasn't a bad one. There were a lot of Bulgarians that started wearing these same stars to demonstrate their solidarity with them. So this is why there was this strong pressure on the authorities not to deport them, not to touch them, and they kept on postponing. So by the end of the war, the Nazis started having so many problems that was the last thing on their mind. So they stopped asking for the Jewish people, and that's how actually all of them were saved. Very proud of this fact. It makes Bulgaria one of the very few countries in Europe that managed to preserve its entire Jewish community. So nowadays the Jewish population is pretty small, about 5,000 people, because later here came the communists, and they weren't getting along that well with Jewish people. So in 1948, when the state of Israel was established, the majority of them were invited to leave the country, and they did it, so 90% of them left, settled down in Israel, and nowadays we have 5,000 of them living all around Bulgaria. Yeah. So I don't know whether you noticed that thing, but we have 4 temples and 4 different religions being very close to each other now.
5 minutes away.
I'm sorry?
In 5 minutes walk, you got loads.
Yeah. We have the Orthodox Church, the one that exploded, the Saint Sunday Church, the Catholic Cathedral, Saint Joseph. Here's the mosque and the synagogue. So that's why we call this place the Square of Tolerance. Yeah. Now, here we have a building from the beginning of the 20th century, and it is Bittersweet style. Now, it was a very popular thing in the beginning of the 20th century. The Neo-Byzantine style. There are various buildings in this thing, and you know, also this one over there has some of the elements of this style. Now, the majority of these buildings, though, were destroyed during the era of the Second World War, but the main one, the biggest one, remained. And you know, in this period, in the beginning of the 20th century, many of the locals were very poor, even too poor to afford having their own bath at home. So that's when the authorities decided that hygiene is a really good virtue. So they voted to build the public bath. And this thing immediately became a huge success. Everybody was going there, like on in the weekends. People could spend their entire weekend inside, and they wouldn't be only taking a bath the entire day. They'd be chit-chatting and gossiping. That is why we joke it's the Facebook of the 20th century. Now, you know, inside the building was divided into two. There was a male and female section, because everybody had to be completely naked. Otherwise, you know, if they weren't divided, this place would not be called the public bath, but I guess public something else. So the public bath remained something very, very special for the locals. But in 1988, it was closed down because they couldn't maintain it anymore. There was an economical problem by the end of the communism, so it was closed down. And recently, the entire thing was renovated and it reopened its doors. But it's now the History Museum of Sofia. Now, if you're looking for a museum to visit here, this might be one of the best ones to be seen here in the city. However, the locals don't like it so much. Some even hate it because they want now their bath back. Now, a very special thing about it is that the bath is being built over one of these hot springs here in the city. So it was powered by this hot mineral water, which had a natural temperature of 40 degrees. Should have been very good in these pools with this temperature and with this special heating water. So that's why people want this thing to be turned once again into a bath. They're promising that they're gonna do it, but they're simply postponing. So now we're gonna go to the side of this building over there. There are some fountains that are running on the same hot water. Nothing can stop it from coming from the ground. And I'm gonna tell you a few words about it. Any questions before we go? Now there's this chimney. You see the very big difference in what people like as aesthetics, because you know the building is from the beginning of the 20th century, and back then when they did it, they had two smaller chimneys for the central heating of the building, and they were beautiful with all the colors of the building. However, the chimneys were too low, and when the locals started building higher buildings here, you know, these are from the 50s. Before that, there were these charming bourgeois buildings, and they were started getting higher and higher, and the smoke from the lower chimneys of the bath would be going inside of their windows. So they claimed that the authorities should build a higher chimney, and it was the 40s, and people were already into the concrete style with simplicity. So in the 40s, they did the new chimney of the building, and you see, it has nothing to do with the style of this building from the beginning of the 20th century. So it's simply a chimney from the central heating, but a concrete one. That's pretty beautiful. Yep. All right, let's go now over there.
Do you still have hammams here, or?
Unfortunately, no. All of them are closed. here is this the water, still as hot as when it was discovered by the Romans. It was, you know, the water existed all the time, but it was the Romans started using it for bathing, you know, putting some infrastructure to lead it to the baths. The water reaches the surface with a temperature of 40 degrees, and you know, before it was used for bathing. Nowadays, as all the public baths around the city closed down, nowadays is used for drinking. And you can see people are pouring their bottles with this water, but that's just a small amount of the water. It flows with 20 liters per second. And on the other side of the building, there's a small complex with similar fountains, with a much higher flow, where people are going with their big empty bottles, filling them with this water, and then drinking this water at home, because it has some really good qualities for the heart and the liver. So it's completely drinkable. You can give it a try. I'm going to show you now myself, that I don't want to poison you with this water. Look. Yeah. You might feel the slight taste of eggs if you try it. That's because of the sulfur inside. It's a bit sulfurous, but you know, it's just a slight taste. And normally, when you put it in a bottle, the taste dissolves, and it's really nice and soft. You know, and most of all, it's free. So give it a try. It's nice one. And meanwhile, I'm gonna give you. I have this here, this statistics form. Oops. It's only from us, for the organization, to know which country you come from, where are you staying here in Sofia, and how did you find out about this tour. That really helps us organize the tour, and I'm going to be very glad if you can fill it out. If you're traveling in a group, you can simply put in brackets like times 3, no, the number of people that you're in a group. So there we go. Thank you very much. And
in the meantime, I'm just gonna close it, as I need to change my battery as well. Yeah.
Monumental Commuter.
Yeah, back in business. We just left from there. How cool is that? Nice garden.
Welcome to the former Lenin Square. Now that was a lot was invested in this place to look the way it looks, because it was like the face of, it became the face of the Communist Party. Now before that, prior to communist times, that was probably the most charming part of the city, with narrow streets and beautiful buildings with lots of ornaments and expensive shops on the first floor. But these things were damaged during the air raids of the Second World War. So when the communists arrived here, they decided to wipe down everything to create this gigantic complex in the neoclassical style, also known as the Stalinist style. Now, the first building that they completed in this Lenin Square was this one over there, which was the headquarters of the Communist Party. Now, it was the most important building in the country. Inside was residing the General Secretary of the Communist Party with his helpers of 9 people from the Politburo. They were making the main decisions in the country. The building used to have this big red star and various sickles and hammers. They were all removed after the fall of the communism. And nowadays, over there, it says Narodno Sabranie, which means National Assembly. It's not really the National Assembly. In fact, it's rather offices of the deputies. They're developing the laws inside and voting them in the building that we're going to see at the end of the tour. But now they're making some renovations inside, and soon it's going to become the actual National Assembly. Now, they promised that it had to be completed 2 years ago, but they should do some postponing, with it. So the next building to be completed again in the 50s was this one over there on the left. It was the Ministry of Electrification, nowadays the presidency, and on the right, that was a hotel, the Balkan Hotel. It's still a hotel, and it has a casino on the first floor. See, casino, presidency. That's why they say Bulgaria is the country of unlimited opportunities. Now, the last building from the square was this one over here. That was the Ministry of Heavy Industry. Currently, it's the Council of Ministers, and it is connected to a building called TUM. And TUM was one of the most
The building
popular
TUM or
things
TUM,
here
that one.
in the city. TUM was the central department store where you can find everything from the communist market, from toothpaste to cars. And when you were buying a car, and when you'd finally get a car, you'd be the happiest person in this country, because getting a car was a very difficult task. You'd pay for it, and then you'd wait between 8 to 12 years to receive it. Yeah, it was a bit hard getting cars. So speaking about this period, let me tell you about two activities we have organized based on this period, the communist period. First of all, we have the communist tour, which is a very interesting thing. The communism in Bulgaria is being seen through various, from various aspects. There are people that are very nostalgic about it. There are others that hate it, and we never managed to reach a consensus on the good and bad things from this period. So it's a very controversial topic, and we're trying in the tour to cover all the points of view about the period, and following the history of the communism in Bulgaria. It's pretty interesting. The tour takes place from today till Monday. It's every day at 4, and we also have this kind of museum dedicated to this period. It's called the Red Flat, and it is an apartment all set with the furniture, all the style from the communist 80s in Bulgaria. So going over there, you're like traveling back in time, and there's an audio guide also telling you about the story of this family inhabiting, living in this place. So it's more about learning about the lifestyle of people during this period. Now, both of these things are paid, but with me, a bit later I'm going to give you, I have these little booklets with some information about our other tours and some recommendations about Sofia. So if you decide to do some of our paid tours, you can use these booklets to receive a small communist discount here. Yeah. All right. I don't know what's going on over there, but normally this square is used for various protests, so it might be now used for a protest. No idea. But now you remember where the Catholic Cathedral was? Over there was the western gate of the city. Now we're going down the stairs and we're stopping at the eastern gate. So the eastern gate is somewhere at the level of this building over there. And you see, the diameter of the city was very, very small, like less than 1 kilometer. So it seemed like, from a nowadays perspective, that was rather a village, but still it was considered to be the biggest city here on the Balkan Peninsula back then in Roman times. Definitely ideas of big cities have changed throughout history. So, let's go down. Yes, yeah. Anyone else? Thank you. the other main street from Roman times. That is the Kumanos Maximus street, connecting with here the eastern gate of the ancient city with the western one next to the cathedral. Now, apart from being, the main street in the city, there was a very important trade road connecting Constantinople with nowadays Belgrade, and that was bringing a constant flow of travelers and traders crossing right through the city because, first of all, because it was a very important road, like the land connection between Asia and Europe, and also the city would be a very important stop for all these travelers because it was a larger one. It had a lot of places for accommodation, a lot of activities here, with these hot springs and baths, and there was also a very large amphitheater. So all these things would make people stay here for a bit longer, spend some more money, and that was really helping the city growing bigger and richer. Now, these are the walls encircling the city center, and they're a bit out of the Roman standards for such a thing. Now, normally the Romans would establish a city next to something like natural fortifications. They would be looking for a place where there's like a river in the terrain, or some rocks or hills to naturally protect the city. But here the ground was very flat. The city already existed, so they decided, okay, we're gonna make it. But then later, when they were making the fortress, they decided to make it much stronger. So they did it 2 meters thick and 8 meters high to get a better protection in case of an invasion. So normally whenever there would be an invasion, the entire population of the city would gather here behind the walls. People would fight back, and when the bad guys were gone, the Romans were able to open doors and continue living happily. So that's what we're going to do now. We're leaving this ancient city, and we're heading towards the presidency on the right. Meanwhile, while we are going over there, you're going to see there are various souvenir shops here. They're all around, and there's most of the souvenir shops are selling some things made out of rose. The rose is a big thing in Bulgaria because we're the biggest manufacturers of rose oil. It's a very hard industry. People get up early in the morning and start picking these rose leaves, and out of 3 tons of rose leaves, they would distill them and make 1 kilo of this rose oil, which is very special for the perfumery and cosmetics industry. So we're the leaders in this thing, and that's why there's so many souvenirs with that. Yeah. So let's go. There's the presidency there.
Join. Why not?
Okay, so here are these guys. They used to be some very important people back in the days when we used to have a king, because they used to keep the king safe. That was a super important unit, and there were some very special requirements for them. They had to be 185 tall, with blonde hair, blue eyes, and strong enough to be able to catch a flying eagle, to pinch one of its feathers, and put it in their hat. Yeah. Few people here in the country can can fit these specifications. So finding these guys was very difficult, and once you'd be part of this unit, that was so prestigious. Everybody wanted to marry these guys, and you know, things have radically changed since then. Now we don't have a king, so they're just here representing the sovereignty. But you know, the discipline with them is been getting worse and worse. You know, there are two here and two inside. Their main job is to stay static. Like the twos inside that are keeping the main flag, they believe that nobody sees them because they're always moving and talking to each other. They still do it. They do it all the time. So here's the presidency, and they're keeping the main gate of the presidency nowadays. The president in Bulgaria, that's his office here. The president is not such an important political figure. He's basically what he does. He's kind of a symbolic figure that can draw the attention of people towards certain problems. The main political figure in the country is the prime minister, head of the government. So now we're heading inside of the inner yard, and inside I'm going to show you the oldest building in the city. Let's go and check it out. All right, now here we have this building, which is really the oldest one in Sofia, and one of the oldest ones around Europe, preserved along with its original roof. The roof has never ever collapsed. Dates from the 4th century, when you know, that was Roman times, so they believed that it was either a temple or a bath. You know, that's what Romans were into. So it might have been a bath, because the archaeologists discovered some canals connecting the hot spring with the main building, and they believe that the main building might have been used as a place where they would control the temperature of the water. They would either heat it up or cool it down, and then they would set the water inside of the rest of the building, which were the actual public baths. But then there was the Emperor Constantine the Great, very influential Roman emperor, that initiated various transforms here in the city. Now, he was the one that made Christianity the official religion in the Roman Empire, and he was looking first of all for a new capital, as he wanted to stay away from pagan Rome. He really loved the city of Serdica, so he saw an opportunity to make his one of his favorite cities the new capital. Key thing he thought is that the city is encircled with mountains, so if it becomes a capital, it's going to grow bigger and bigger, and all these mountains are going to be serving as natural fortification for this big city. However, there was no river in the city, nor any access to the water. So that's why he eventually was convinced that it's not such a good idea to have the capital here. He found Byzantium and created Constantinople over there. But still, he was spending a lot of time here, and he initiated various changes in the city. Like, it was during his period when the building was converted into a church, and the rest of the buildings converted into his private VIP apartments for all the guests he was receiving. And they were really, really special. You know, some of these, you see there's some tiles on the ground, especially over there. They were, these tiles, they would have like little columns, like spacers, that would divide the ground into two. And there was this underground part there, when in winter, there would be hot water circling underground, naturally heating the floor. So should be pretty sophisticated back in the days. So the main building was used by the Greeks and the Bulgarians as a church. Later it was converted into a mosque by the Ottomans. Now it's once again a church, and it luckily survived communist times, because the communists had other plans. They thought about destroying the church and creating a garage here for their luxurious cars. but you know, they were convinced that that's not such a great idea. So instead of destroying it, they changed a little bit of the plans of these buildings to hide the church from the sight of the locals. So the idea was that when you're walking around here, you're going to be never really able to see there's a church here. So the few people that knew that there's a church would be calling it the best kept secret of the city. So still, nowadays it's a normal functioning church, and it's often used for baptism, so you can check it out. It's called St. George, but we also call it the Rotunda, because of the shape being round. Yeah. And now it's time for me to give you these booklets that I was telling you about. It's simply little booklets that we are printing with some recommendations on what you can do here in the city and also around the country. So here they are. Also, there's going to be some information about the other tours we organize. It brings a discount from the price from the paid tours, so have them with you. I'm going to give each group of you a booklet, us, for saving the trees. Yeah. So I'm gonna go around, give you these booklets, and
Thanks, but I'm leaving in 2 hours.
All right.
I don't have it.
Oh, that's good, thank you.
all right, there you go.
Thank you.
Look, I'm with her, so it's okay.
All right. Anyone else? Everybody's received the booklet? Yeah, that's good. All right. Well then, it's a bit cold here, so let's go this way. Now we're heading towards the city garden of Sofia. The first building that we see, you know, even from here, that is, it used to be a mosque called Büyükcami, which means a big mosque, because it was a big mosque. Now, after Bulgaria was liberated, all the Muslims, you know, the majority of Muslims left the city, so they converted this building now into a museum. That was the first museum in the country. Now it's the Archaeological Museum, another very interesting museum here in the city center. So let's go this way, then we're turning right.
No worries. How are you, sir?
Alright, so here, this entire place is the city garden of Sofia. Now we're experiencing an unusually warm winter. Normally there's a lot of snow, people are freezing, but now it's like spring, and so that's why a few of the benches are occupied. In the summer, it's crowded here. I mean, people are fighting for these benches because they want to relax here in the central park. And you know, having so many parks around the country, around the city, has created this culture for locals to hang out in parks than going so much to cafes and the cafes. So that's why this place is really popular. And you know, when the sun starts going down, youngsters would crawl out and they'd start drinking beer in public.
Yay!
That's illegal according to the laws, but nobody cares. I mean, even policemen do see you that you're holding a beer. They wouldn't say anything bad. We can come to you, help you opening the bottle, drink your beer. So the place has a really nice nightlife. There are people staying here until 3-4 a.m. in the summer. It's a pretty popular one. So most of the locals call this place the Garden of the National Theatre because of this building here. It was established in the beginning of the place of the 20th century, and about 20 years ago a guy was commissioned to repaint all the golden objects, and he did it. However, in addition to that, he decided to make a small joke that actually made him fired. So, can you find this little joke? It's hard to be found, so I'm gonna give you a hint. It's related to the figure of the little baby angel on the right side of the main figure.
Put a Turkish.
Painted the baby's pee in golden. So, you know, the conservative authorities saw this thing and they were very angry. So they immediately decided to fire the guy. So that's when they realized that the baby's too high for them to climb up there and to erase the joke. And they were pretty afraid they might damage the little thing. So, you know, that is why the baby, they left it like that. And that's why the baby has still got this golden member. Yeah, you know, the theater now is named after one of our most famous writers. He's called Ivan Vazov. That's what's written over there. Народный театр, Ivan Vazov, National Theater, Ivan Vazov. Ivan Vazov was a popular figure because he was writing patriotic stuff. And he was still alive when the theater was completed and was named after him. Also, he had a beautiful house 100 meters away from here. So just imagine his ordinary evening routine. He got out of his beautiful house and he'd start walking in this street here called Ivan Vazov. Then he'd make a right turn, you'd enter the theater called Ivan Vazov, and he would watch a play written by Ivan Vazov. Very lucky person. Some people say that he was pretty lucky in his death as well. Now, we know some great part of his big success was due to the numerous inspirations he was having, and it wasn't ordinary inspirations. They say it was young female inspirations coming from the theater over here. So the legend goes that he found his death at the age of 71 while actually making love to one of his young female inspirations. I'm not so sure whether the story is true, but if it's true, he might have been really one of the luckiest Bulgarians we've had. But I don't want to have any bad thoughts about the patriarch of the Bulgarian literature, so let's quickly leave this place. Our next stop is going to be a tree. Let's check it out.
Because I think between 1 and 2 we have time, right? Because we only have to walk like 20 minutes to the train station from this area. So, yeah, tell me if you're going to be able to go there in time. If not, we can go to the train station and then like the
So now we're here for this tree because of the things that are on it, and they're called martenica. It's a very popular thing. Just in 2 weeks, already you can see people selling martenicas on the street. It's something that we exchange on the 1st of March. So we normally exchange such a thing, normally in the form of a bracelet. So we put it on the wrists of our friends and family, and we're supposed to wear them until we see the storks coming back from Africa. You know, the storks are some of the birds that migrate for the winter to spend somewhere warmer. So once they come back, it's a certain sign that it's spring. So we're supposed to take off the martinis we have and put it on the blossoming branch of a tree. That is believed to bring some luck and health through the rest of the year. So it's a very, very popular tradition. Everybody does it, and this tree has so many of them because that's one of the first trees that starts blossoming here in the park. It has these beautiful white colors, and it's a plum. Plums, you know, are some very respected fruits here in Bulgaria because out of plum we make rakia, the Bulgarian whiskey. You know. Once we joined the EU, they imposed a regulation on how much rakia can a single person make, and they limited it to 100 liters per person annually. There are protests about that thing. They said, only 100 liters? So they still, you know, the rakia is still being produced at home, and normally the one that they're selling in supermarkets like 40 degrees, 40% alcohol inside, but I've heard about homemade rakia, which is 75% alcohol. Very strong thing. So if you can get your hands on some homemade rakia, you know, that's usually the best one you can get. However, be careful. You never know how strong it is, so only small sips. Yeah. All right, now we're heading over there, and we're gonna stop at the yellow building, which is the former royal palace. Let's go.
But it's the same tradition because I'm also from Romania and we have the Maxi shop.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
You have it all so, all right, now here's the former royal palace, a very old building, dates from 1850. That was Ottoman times, so it wasn't the palace back in the days. It was the main building of the city, the Ottoman Konak. In this case, it was a multiple-purpose building combining the governor's house with the local administration, the police department, and the jail. All these things packed together. So after the liberation, as it was the largest building in the city, it was given to our first monarch, and all of our monarchs lived inside, including our guy Boris III. He passed away inside of one of the rooms. Now there are rumors that he could have been poisoned by the Nazis, not giving away the Jewish people. Other rumors say that he was poisoned by the Bulgarians. Some rumors say that it was the communists. So eventually the historians decided to agree that the king simply died. So soon after that, here came the communists, and they really liked the building. It was nationalized and used by one of our first Communist Party leaders called Georgy Dimitrov. Georgy Dimitrov, he was a very, very famous person in the communist world, best friends with Stalin. Probably that's the reason why he also had a mysterious death. But we loved them so much, so we looked towards Moscow for inspiration. And there was this guy Lenin, who was mummified after his death. So we said, we're gonna do the same thing with our guy. So his body was embalmed. We created a gigantic mausoleum. So then the embalmed body was exposed in a transparent coffin, and it's part of the school program. The teachers would take children by hand and would say them this dead thing, and they had to be ecstatic. Wow, such a dead body. So this thing was going on during communist times. After the fall of the communism in 1999, 10 years after the fall, the mausoleum was destroyed and the mummy buried in the ground. So the mausoleum used to be right over there, where now we see nothing, just an empty spot. So soon after that guy passed away, the building here was converted to the National Art Gallery, which is currently hosting various art exhibitions along with the Ethnographic Museum being inside. Now probably you've also noticed these yellow bricks. Some of the main streets of the city are covered with these yellow bricks, and as I told you, I'm originally from Sofia. So when I was a child, my grandmother was taking me around the city for a walk, and once I asked her, what's with these yellow bricks, because you know, on my street they're all grey and normal. So she said to me that it was a gift from the Austro-Hungarian princess for King's wedding. And I was a child, and I trusted her. But some 20 years later, I joined Free Sofia tour, and they provided me some evidence that this was a complete lie. Simply imagine how I felt when I realized my grandmother has been lying me for all these years. I was very upset, but somehow I managed to carry on. That's how strong I am. Now, listen to what really happened. In the beginning of the 20th century, the infrastructure of the city was a complete disaster. There was nothing but dust and mud. Now, around these buildings that are from this period, you're gonna see next to the entrance, some places you're gonna see there are these iron things where people were scraping the mud from their shoes. So it was a disaster, and the authorities started looking for a more European outlook of the city. It's gonna be more clean, and they found these yellow Hungarian bricks. Now they thought that they were very beautiful, and even though they were super expensive, they arranged a loan from Germany to buy the bricks and started placing them all around. And people were so happy because, you know, it was so clean and modern and beautiful. So eventually they opened the streets, and people were just about to start walking on them when it started to rain. And that's when the locals realized that when these bricks are wet, they're very, very slippery. So they were very angry. They spent a fortune on something that's so dangerous. They're just about to start protesting when the authorities decided to spread the word that we didn't really give any money for these bricks. They claimed that it was a gift from the Austro-Hungarian princess for the king's wedding. So they distributed this fake news around the society, and still 100 years later, people believe this story. See, that's the power of fake news. All right, so no need to worry with this warm winter. There's no snow. It's not so dangerous. Still though, have it in mind when you're crossing. Some of the car drivers don't know about this thing, so it takes them a lot of time to stop. No need to worry now. We're crossing the bricks, and we're going to continue through the park over there. Let's go.
You failed. I've done the same on that row. Again, graffitis, same like in Greece. Maybe some Greeks came here and made these graffitis. How cool is this old car? Look.
Sofia, and that is the church that, as I told you in the beginning, it gave its name to the city. Now, this church, as I told you, was the initiative of the Emperor Justinian. He had this program for building churches all around the empire. So, in the case of Serbia back then, Serbia, the Romans decided to put this church on top of the highest hill. So that was a bit away from the city itself. You see, it's pretty far away from the place where the gate of the city was. But then they placed it on the highest point of the city, and making something enormous for back then's ideas for buildings, it really became the symbol of the city. When travelers were coming from a very long distance, that would be the special characteristic of the city, because there's a small city with a big church on the highest hill, and they'd be saying, "Oh, look, there is Sofia," speaking about the church, but meaning the city of Serdica. When they would go back home, their relatives would be very curious if they've been inside of the Saint Sofia Church, because it was something extraordinary with its size and dimensions. So people kept on repeating Sofia, 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 and with time the church was more famous than the city itself. So that's how basically it gave its name to the city. Now, when the Ottomans conquered it, they referred it, everybody's referring to it not anymore as Serdica, but as Sofia. That's how it gave its name to the city. Now, the building was again in the same way used by the Greeks and the Bulgarians. The Ottomans converted it into a mosque, and while it was a mosque, it had the minaret. But then during an earthquake, one of them fell over the building, and that's when the Ottomans abandoned it. After the liberation, for a while, the firemen took it over, because you see, that was the end of the city, that was the highest point. So on top of the building, they established a tower, by surveilling the entire city from over there. And finally, in the 30s, they converted it back into a church. So nowadays, you can check it out. It's a normal functioning church. Curious thing is that recently they were digging the ground here to strengthen its foundations. And while digging the ground to do this thing, they discovered that on that spot in Roman times there was the cemetery of the city. And back in the days, it was on normal level, but it got buried underneath the ground. So nowadays, you can check it out from the inside. There are these stairs taking it down to this underground museum. All these sarcophaguses. On some places there are some mosaics from the previous temple that used to be here before. So it's pretty interesting to be seeing this thing. If you don't have the time to go to the museum, simply check the church out from the inside. There are some transparent parts on the floor, which give you an idea what's really underneath the ground. But no matter what you do, really my advice is you to check it out. It's been a very, very important thing for the city for a very long period. Yeah, and it's the authentic church in the 6th century. Yeah. All right. Any questions? Well, now we're going to be moving to our last stop, which is going to be right over there, next to this line. Let's go. That's where the bourgeois class is living. Almost came here because they don't translate so much. This is still, I guess it's mostly locals. All right, now we have this place which is on fire. Yeah. This is the complex of living soldiers dedicated to people that have given their lives to the country. It has also a poem written by Ivan Vazov. So normally officials are coming here and laying flowers. There is the previous monument of the unknown soldier, a lion. Now there's this lion. We in Bulgaria, we're mad about lions. Probably you've seen there is many lions all around here. In medieval times, our monarchs decided that's going to be the animal that's going to be representing their power. They started putting lions on their rings to make seals, stampings. So ever since then, we're mad about lions. So we really place them everywhere. Our currency is called lev, which means lion. We believe the shape of our country on the map resembles a lion. It might be only us seeing this thing. So lions everywhere. And when there was this guy who was commissioned, this sculpture that was commissioned to make a monument for the unknown soldier, he thought he's going to make a lion, and that's going to satisfy everyone. So he went with making a lion. Now he had some problems. He's never seen a real lion in his life, and probably that's the reason why he made the proportion between the front paws and the ones in the back. But you know what really shocked the locals is that the lion is too skinny. Its ribs through the skin. They said that's unacceptable. A Bulgarian lion should be strong and muscular and fat. So they took this lion and exiled it on the way to Plovdiv. Stayed all along for several decades. Then they moved it back here, and I personally really love it because when I was a child, my parents were taking me to all these demonstrations after the fall of the communism. Normally they were taking place here, and you know when you're a child and you're at a demonstration, you know at this level and you see nothing. But I was the luckiest child in the crowd because they put you on top of the lion like the king of the crowd. Yeah. So the building over here is again in the same style as the public bath, the neo-Byzantine style. That is actually here the Holy Synod. It's something like the parliament of the church. In Bulgaria, as we're also an Orthodox country, we have our own patriarch. He's the local pope. So he's residing with the rest of the priests inside of this building, deciding these holy questions. The white building over there is the National Assembly, where all of our 240 deputies are gathering to vote the wise laws that our country has. We're at the back side of it. On the other side, there's a statue of a horseman, which is Alexander II, the liberator, that was the Russian emperor that liberated Bulgaria in 1878. That's how we're demonstrating our gratitude for this liberation. And down there's this building with a green roof, which is the Sofia University. Here is this building, which is just a printing factory after liberation. Nowadays, it's a museum, the Square 500 Museum, where you would go if you want to learn about the Bulgarian art. It's kind of chronologically arranged. And last but not least, here's this churchy called Alexander Nevsky. You know, the majority of the locals don't have any idea who Alexander Nevsky is, except for me. Now, Alexander Nevsky was a Russian prince that defended Russia from the Teutonic Order. Really nothing to do with our country, but this guy was a patron saint of the emperor that initiated this war against the Oatman Empire, which led to the liberation of the country. So this way, we would once again claim how grateful we are for this liberation by naming our biggest cathedral like that. And you know, once the country was liberated, the locals saw an opportunity that they're going to build the biggest cathedral possible the best materials possible, and this way they're gonna say to the world, look, now we're free Christians. And that's why they wanted to build an enormous thing, and the authorities said to them, we cannot afford this thing, it's too expensive. The locals said, we don't care, we're gonna do it anyways. So they started collecting donations to complete it, and for the next 40 years they were collecting money for the completion of this thing, and they managed to do it. And still, you know, they went with this ambitious idea, and they completed the biggest project possible. You know, it's high, the dome is 40 meters, all the domes are covered in gold. The best materials were really used inside. There are different marbles from different parts of the world. And you know, once you get inside, you're gonna see there on the right side of the altar there are two thrones. One is dedicated to the Patriarch, and that's the smaller throne, because in Orthodox Christianity the king is above the Patriarch, and the larger one is for the king. However, no king has ever sat on this throne over there, because the only king available after the completion of this cathedral is Boris III. And Boris III said after the event with the first church with the Kumanos exploded, he said that he's never ever entering again a church. So actually no king has ever sat inside. Still though, the throne is there. So guys, if you haven't been there, definitely check it out. In Orthodox churches, we're lighting candles and leaving wishes. It's real candles, so I guess that's why all these the walls and frescoes are dark tinted from the smoke. That makes it even more mysterious. So if you haven't been inside, definitely check it out. And that's the end of the tour, and I think it's a good place to make our group photo. It's gonna be uploaded to our Facebook page, Free Sofia Tour. Then you can go to this page. You can find the you can find this photo. You can like it. You can share it. You can tag yourself on it. You know, René Descartes, the French philosopher, said, "I'm tagged, therefore I am." Said, of course. So, come here and let's make this group photo.
So yes guys, all the tour is finished. Special thanks to, what's your name?
Dino.
Dino from Free Tour Sofia.
Yes.
See you guys later.